things were selling. There was tons of buyers knocking on my doors, and now there's nobody. Where are they? It's definitely a roller coaster career that you can have a deal 1 minute going towards a closing, and the next it falls apart for a few $1,000s.
People can confuse luck with the fact that they're good when in fact they're not. Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello Podcast. We have with us a hustler, a individual who has not only served the community at a really high level in his vocation in law enforcement in various different ways. He also is relatively new to the real estate industry. He's actually on our team, at the Novello Group, and really been producing great outcomes. The one and only Mr. Heath Wagner. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me here today, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And, the title of this episode is How to Take 15 Listings in Your First 6 Months. So, if you could share with the audience briefly, like what you were doing before, what you're still currently doing, and talk about kind of how you decided to make the transition to be like, now that I'm kind of completing that stage in my life, I'm interested in this real estate thing.
Yeah. So I've been in law enforcement now for 19 years and kind of on the road to retirement within the next year. And I was looking for a vehicle to kind of catapult me into retirement, pave the way for life after law enforcement, so to say. And, it was brought to my attention, look into real estate, look into investing. And so I started asking around, and it just so happens that you were kind of previously introduced to me a few years back. And again, it was kind of referred to me to reach out to you again. So beginning of 2022, we jumped on a call together. And that kind of just got me started in this new path. And I couldn't be more excited and enthusiastic of where it's taken me.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother. Yeah, so we were actually kind of on the same travel baseball team for our sons, right? So we had spent time together, kind of been around each other. And then when you were getting into real estate, there was also another individual, I think his name was Kevin. And you were like, hey man, I'm thinking of real estate. And Kevin's like, you should talk to Aaron. And then you reached out and then we had that conversation and that was awesome. So, and you also made the decision pretty early to not only, partner with me at EXP, but then you were like, hey man, like I'd really love to have the opportunity to be on the team. So talk a little bit about what caused you to come to that conclusion, because I think a lot of agents, perhaps are newer and they're like, well, should I just do this on my own? Should I maybe be on a team? So what caused you to make that decision?
Yeah, great question. When I first started, it was quite overwhelming. Coming from a background in a career that I've done for so long, I lacked the experience and the knowledge base to be successful in this. And coming into it, I was taking in a lot of knowledge and taking in a lot of information at once. And again, it was overwhelming. So, I think the benefit of reaching out to you and aligning yourself, aligning myself with someone who's already been extremely successful in this industry and who's also kind of made their name of coaching other real estate agents. And, you had so much value to offer right away. And I kind of found that initially when I was kind of deciding whether to join a team or not, I found it to be pretty overwhelming, kind of working a full-time job at the same time in law enforcement still, and trying to prospect for clients, understand the fundamentals of real estate and the necessity of just the way things are supposed to work in this business was extremely difficult for me. So once I was able to really connect with someone personally and have these conversations on that one-on-one instruction and kind of have that person that I can rely on to go to as a source for all kinds of information in this business. It was basically a no-brainer. It was something I needed to do.
That's awesome, bro. And I'm equally as appreciative of you, for sure. So, and I'm aware that of a couple things. The first one is you mentioned it kind of in passing, but I want everybody listening to really hear you, that you actually still are full-time employed in law enforcement. So this idea of taking 15 listings in 6 months, you've been able to accomplish that while also having a full-time job, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's a direct kind of, testament to what you're saying in terms of proximity being power and really dramatically shrinking the learning curve. So I wrote down that you have certain qualities and characteristics like the hustle, persistence. I know you want to be like exceptionally really good at, this, anything that you do really, and this kind of chosen profession. And, you really asked yourself and said like, okay, well, how can I dramatically shorten the learning curve? Because to your point, it's super overwhelming. There's all these moving parts. You also have a lot of people that are yelling at you, trying to tell you like, what's the way, right? You should do this. No, you shouldn't do that. You should do this, right? So getting a clear, accurate assessment of what you should actually be doing and what you should be focused on has made a tremendous difference for you, right? Because people can find themselves going down a rabbit hole and then realizing like, oh, this isn't an accurate assessment of reality. And the way I describe it to people, it's kind of like if you were on a, I don't know, like a trip somewhere. It's like, yeah, you could try to backpack it and figure it out yourself. At the same time, you'll probably get lost. You'll probably have like some weird kind of, experiences, maybe ones that are dangerous, versus if you had a guide. And that would be, make the experience much more enjoyable, right? Now, I guess I'm curious too, though, because I know a lot of the hesitation for people about kind of being on a team would be kind of splits and like money, right? So talk a little bit about like value and why you perceive like, yeah, there are splits involved, but at the same time, I perceive what I'm receiving in return to be equally, if not more valuable.
Right. Yeah. It goes to, a common phrase in real estate, return on investment. So I'm making an investment in my career by aligning myself with someone who's already done what I want to do. I know for a fact that I wouldn't have done this volume of business in the last 6 months on my own. Most realtors out of the gate are doing 2-3 deals a year, and that's maybe on their own. So for me to be this successful is only showing me that, the sky's the limit in the future. So I just need to keep on the same path I am, align myself with yourself and other successful people with EXP, and just follow what you've done. And that's just going to get me where I want to be.
And I wrote down a few things. Like one is short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. Our tendency is to, we're really wired that way to think in short term versus long term. That's why, we live in a country, it's one of the richest in the world. And a lot of people end up at the end of their working life, subsistence on the government or the kindness of family members or strangers, right? Where they're not thinking long term as far as like investing and things of that nature. You also use the word investing. And then, I also wrote down that 80% of anybody who's a new licensee is gone within a year. And that's just a statistic, right? Between 7 and 80% of people who get their license within a year, they're doing something else, right? Because the learning curve is massive. So if there's a way that I can condense that learning curve, that dramatically increases the probability that I'll still kind of be in this game moving forward. Now, I'm also curious because you're somebody who you've accomplished a lot in a different area of life. So in law enforcement, I know you've been, kind of stellar, top of what you do. You were also SWAT, right? So that's like the elite force, of law enforcement. So my hallucination is a lot of people who perhaps had done that in their life, there may be like an ego there, like, I got this, like I can figure this shit out. Like, it's just me, what I mean? I'll do it myself. So talk a little bit about that. Cause I don't get that from you at all. Like at all. You're more like, hey man, I have this awareness that there's stuff that and I don't, and I'm just interested in learning from you. And I don't get any like puffery. I don't get any like, peacocking or anything like that.
What's funny is I'm make a quick correction to that. How you may imagine that a lot of SWAT guys are like, oh, I got this, I'm on my own. I can do this. Believe it or not, SWAT is a team effort. I wouldn't be successful in SWAT or in police work on my own. You need that team behind you. There's 20 something other guys on the team that add to your success, and one guy alone isn't going to be able to do it. So it's more of a team event, and that's how I looked at real estate. I looked at it as, I want to be part of a team, and I wanted to be part of a successful team, because there's other teams out there, and there's other avenues that I could have taken. And when you align yourself with someone at the top of their game and someone that you trust and even have a somewhat of a personal relationship with, it makes that team aspect that much greater.
Yeah, I love that. I remember having a conversation with you, and I was saying like, yeah, bro, like you're SWAT in that specific area, and I'm just SWAT in real estate.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just learning tactically, tactically, like, I know nothing about that. So if we were in that realm, like, I'd be looking at you like, hey man, like, what are we doing here? What are we supposed to do? And in this realm, right, it's just applying kind of a similar approach to what it is that we're doing, just very efficient, very purposeful, very intentional, coming from a place of like wanting to serve other people. So I guess talk a little bit about specifically the benefits of being part of a team. So from your perspective, like, what are the like tangible benefits that you feel for agents that are out there that may be thinking about it, or maybe looking for someone to perhaps kind of team up with? Because I'm aware that as the marketplace shifts and changes, that becomes, like more important is to have, there's kind of safety in numbers sort of thing, and have somebody that's a team leader that's committed to adding value and helping you in some way. So for you personally, what have been some of the main kind of values that you get?
Yeah, it was guidance, and not only from you, but it's from the rest of the team. The administrative staff, Carla, Gabriella, Donna. Everybody on board on the team has added so much value and assisted in my growth, because you, as a new agent, you can easily get lost in a lot of the behind the scene transaction material that's needed to be learned. So again, it's you have to be proficient in the prospecting, setting appointments, lead follow up, and getting to closing. You have to be proficient in all that, but you also have to have knowledge of everything behind the scenes as far as the marketing goes, the paperwork that goes with transactions. But no, as a team, you kind of get everything once in a package that's kind of tied up right there for you to have access to whenever needed.
Yeah. So it's like the difference between trying to put all of that together, like a CRM that's dialed in, staff that's dialed in on listing coordination, transaction coordination, a client care coordinator, like trying to figure that out all on your own, or just plugging into a system where it's already set up and it's just plug and play. And then all you've really had to focus on is prospect, lead, follow up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. And because of that, you've been able to, produce in a meaningful way, right? To be, 15 listings in 6 months. When you first started, we were still in a marketplace that was like white hot. So like the whole like kind of focus was on listings. And I've trained you to do that, right? Like how to talk to people, pre-qualify, go on appointments, take listings. And that was the whole focus. And anything that you listed, it would sell. And then I remember the marketplace shifting rather quickly because the cost of money went up dramatically. And then me and you having conversations like, hey, bro, we need to focus on pre-qualification and the pricing portion, listing presentation. Because what happened is we ended up with like 6 listings and none of them were selling. And I remember you get on a call with me because you have, this like hard to serve and like it really bothered you. It's like, oh man, like these it's not selling. Is there anything we could do, Aaron? And I was like, hey, brother, yeah, we got to ask for a price reduction. You're like, that's it? I'm like, yeah, that's it. Because really that, and then I remember like sometimes jumping on calls with you to help guide people through that price reduction conversation. And also once you, got a few of those adjustments, instantaneously offers on the table. And then you start to realize like, oh, like this is really what it's about, right? I really do need to. So talk a little bit about that acquisition of skills, because one skill is talking to people, setting appointments. Another skill is pre-qualifying the appointments. Another skill is like pricing property, like, and then negotiating deals. Like there's these skills that are involved, and kind of without proximity, the learning curve on that would be like enormous.
Yeah. So great question. I'm aware that in the last year or so, prior to about 6 months ago, a new agent coming in could probably take a listing, have 10 offers by the second day it was on the market. And, next they're the best thing since sliced bread. So they're posting about it on Instagram. Look at all these houses I'm closing, everything else. And now as the market's changing, that same new agent coming in without any direction or information is like, what is going on? Why isn't this working? I was doing this. Things were selling. There was tons of buyers knocking on my doors. And now there's nobody. Where are they? So you really have to learn as a new agent, how to really figure out how to price property correctly, how to talk to your clients about making necessary adjustments on their property, to ultimately reach that price that's going to find a buyer to get to closing. So again, as a new agent, I could imagine that people or agents without that guidance, without that coach to really help them and kind of explain to them what's going on, are probably pounding their head against the wall right now. And I can imagine it's frustrating because I've been frustrated. And, even as part of a team and having you by my side, I've been frustrated. But I always, I have the ability to get you on the phone and we talk about it and I figure out, okay, here's what needs to happen. So It's actually, again, it goes back to that guidance. It goes back to that information that, you've already been through a market like this. You've already been through, ups and downs in this marketplace. So how to navigate these waters. So by aligning myself with someone who's already been there, it's such a great help and great tool.
Yeah, I love that. And talk a little bit about, because, here we are, we're like, like 6 months, 15 listings, like that's great. Talk a little bit about the ups and downs that are involved in that. Because I know we've had numerous conversations where it's like, top of the mountain, yeah, man, it's fantastic. And then Cole's like, I don't know, man, like what's going on here? This is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I'm learning and I'm taking every day as a new lesson, in this real estate adventure of mine. And I'm so excited to have that opportunity to learn because it's only going to make me better in the long term. Again, in the future is what I'm looking out for. You always spoke to me about that kind of rocky cut scene where you have to go through the hard, you have to go through the sweat, you have to go through the frustrations to be able to come out on top and learn what to do and what not to do. So again, it's definitely a roller coaster career that you can have a deal 1 minute going towards a closing and the next, it falls apart for a few $1,000s. And you have no control of that. And the one thing I've learned is you have to detach yourself from the outcome. And I've learned that from you because I could imagine that, a lot of agents, feel like everything's falling apart and they have no control. And ultimately, you can control some things, but, you can only keep it together as much as you can do. You can only do what's within your power as an agent. And that's where you have to become detached from it and know that you did the best you can. And as long as you're doing what you need to do and your pipeline is where it needs to be and you have other deals that you're working on, then there's going to be another day. You'll be okay.
That's exactly right. I love that. And we've had numerous conversations where I'm like, Heath, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Like, it's all right. And I wrote down a few things where it's like, that idea of the rocky cutscene, I think in our current kind of place and space in society, and particularly with social media, we have this false misperception that like of this like overnight success thing. I've had people come up to me and be like, oh, you're like an overnight sensation. I'm like, all right, well, grab a calculator. I want you to multiply, right? 3 hours times like 280, then multiply that by 16. That's the amount of time that it took me to become an overnight sensation. So everybody that I know who has produced kind of outsized outcomes from a business perspective, they always went through the Rocky cutscene, which is where you see Rocky, kind of embracing the suck and running up the hill and like hitting the like kind of, meat in the freezer. And that sometimes can take somewhere from 3 years to sometimes 5, years of that Rocky cutscene to build the foundation of skills, right? The foundation of mindset, the foundation of not just learning what to say and how to say it, but then learning emotional intelligence, which we've spent time with. Because even though you came from one area, this area is kind of interesting because in one area you have full authority and like people have to listen to what you say. In this area, they don't, right? You can't just be like, yo, I need you to like sit over there on the curb and they do it, right? So it requires a different, kind of skill set. And I love that you mentioned that to people because I think that that's really, really important. And I'm also aware the thing I wrote down is that it's really actually quite helpful for you. So the marketplace that we came out of, which was like your first maybe like, I don't know, a couple months where everything was just white hot and flying off the shelf and whatever, multiple offers. And all you had to do was just get the listing paperwork signed. That's not a normal environment. And it's also not real estate like transactions, right? It's not sustainable. And once it shifted, one of the conversations that we had is like, listen, brother, I know you want to be like really like top notch at this. And like asking yourself a question, like, how is this happening for me instead of to me? And what it's doing is it's creating an environment for you where you can actually get really good at this. Learn how to set appointments at a high level, learn how to pre-qualify at a super high level to weed out the people that are just, kind of kicking tires, right? The people that are interested but not committed, right? The people that are not 8, 9s, and 10s. And then we have this other thing because we went through this where the inventory started to go up and I felt you kind of be like, oh man, I'm like, listen, brother, this is good. And you're like, how's this good? I don't understand. How's this good? It's like, well, the way this is good is there's a skill that's now coming to the surface that we need to work on. So then we hopped on a Zoom call, like, hey, here's how you interpret data. Even today, you were like, yeah, I've got this appointment. And I was looking at the comps and I was going to say this. And I'm like, well, I'm going to say this. And you're like, oh, okay, right? So it's continuing to refine. And really this environment is one that's conducive for building skills and skills that are the foundation of a career, right? Exactly. So if everything's flying off the shelf, there's no skills involved and people can confuse luck with the fact that they're good when in fact they're not.
I think success is the culmination of everything that you learn put together, and so as I'm learning over time, it's that time spent under the bar and it's learning different skill sets in this real estate business as I go, which is super beneficial because I'm going to come across them again. It may not be tomorrow, but I guarantee you within the next month or so, I'm going to come across something that I just learned last month. So again, it's learning those skills and ultimately by learning and taking it all in and putting it all together, that's where you build success. That's how you get to the top of that mountain. It's again, you bring up social media and it's interesting because a lot of realtors are posting all the fancy stuff, all the big homes and everything they're selling, but nobody sees what they put in, to it, the work that they put behind it and how they built that business.
Yeah. Nobody sees you like going somewhere. What'd you do with some lady's cats? Like, I don't even remember. Like nobody sees you showing up to an open house, super pumped and nobody shows up. Nobody's seeing the calls that me and you equally is appreciative, to kind of play a part in your kind of growth and development. Without you, there'd be no place for me.
Right.
I love your hustle. I love your intensity. I love your kind of work ethic and your commitment to kind of serve and be the best you possibly can at whatever it is that you're doing. So if people want to find you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to ask you any questions, if they're interested in selling their home and they're watching this, or they have a referral for us down here in South Florida, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram, Heath Wagner, or Heath at the Novello Group is a good email contact for us. Just feel free to reach out. Website sold in South Florida. So it's just, I encourage people to reach out, look into EXP, because again, the benefits there, I know you've had tons of podcasts on that. And again, that as a new agent is extremely, beneficial. And there's so many different companies out there. As a new agent, you have to really do your due diligence and research to see what's going to serve you best and what options are out there for you.
Yeah, I love that, brother. Well, listen, he's the real deal. If you reach out to him, he's an awesome dude who'll answer any questions you may have. So again, brother, appreciate you. And I look forward to connecting soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.